I'm Dr. Kevin Meehan from the University of Central Florida, and welcome to Episode 1, our inaugural episode of Flipping the Funnel, a podcast about small farming in the Caribbean. Dr. Leighton Naraine is a longtime college lecturer in geography, urban planning, and agricultural studies, among other subjects. He also advises governments and non-governmental organizations on a wide range of development policies, and he is owner and manager of Plum Tree Farms, a small 5-acre operation in the eastern Caribbean island of St. Kitts. Recently, he authored a book on small farm management for IGI Global Publishing. Dr. Naraine's book is titled Optimizing the Use of Farm Waste and Non-Farm Waste to Increase Productivity and Food Security, Emerging Research and Opportunities. While that title is something of a mouthful, at the center of the book is an important and quite digestible concept called flipping the funnel. We spoke recently with Dr. Naraine to discuss this concept, which relates to farm productivity, and other aspects of his model for creating a successful, small-scale farm that is integrated, diversified, and generates zero waste.
So the farm concept really is basically an integrated concept. But to achieve that level of integration where we can utilize all waste to approach a zero waste scenario, the farm needs to be diversified enough. It needs to be sufficiently diversified so that it gives opportunities for particular waste that is needed for crops in the first instance, and then for the livestock to produce the waste for those crops. So you have crop waste that can go back to crops, but that's not so potent and it takes longer. The waste from livestock is more potent, and you can get a more rapid turnaround, more rapid growth in the crops from that. In any case, most communities, if not all, most communities need some form of livestock as well as crops. Very few may depend entirely on vegetables and fruits and so forth. So because of that, in order to build food security, we need crops and livestock. And that in itself presents the opportunity as well to be diversified enough. On a particular farm, if it's large enough to afford all those activities, then that individual farm is more likely to be successful, because what we produce as waste costs, there's input cost. So if you're planting corn and you harvest only the grains from that, what happens to the cob? What happens to the plant itself? And all of the input factors would have contributed to that. So the idea then is to utilize the entire corn plant rather than throwing that away, because not only the time it takes for that and the seeds and so forth, but think of the water, think of the labor that went into it. So there it is. You can make silage from that. So if you're entirely a crop farmer, you may want to make silage, which can then become food for animals. If you shred the corn plant, you can then compost that and produce compost for soil, as fertilizer for soil. But the thing is, if you let's say you were to feed the animals with corn, you may not want to use the grain, maybe some of it, if they're surplus, because corn you can sell on the market and be competitive in terms of price and so forth. You could sell the corn and have a good cash flow from that, because there's a high demand for corn for people for the table. But then if you use the silage, you can feed pigs, you can even feed cows and so forth, that they can utilize that, and then you also have meat for the community. So the idea is to be able to use it in more than one way, use that waste in more than one way. In order to do that, it will create opportunities for various enterprises on an individual farm. And one of those enterprises can be that you can get into a pig ranch, or you can cattle ranch or a chicken ranch. at Plum Tree Farms in Keon, St. Kitts, we have a pig ranch where any excess of produce from the farm, from the crop farm, whether it be pumpkin, corn, etc., you could feed that to the pigs. So that helps the fattening of the pigs. It reduces the cost of feeding the pigs. But then this is interesting because the pigs now will produce waste that you can use to dry the grains and even the pumpkin, because if you don't do that, those can deteriorate very rapidly and they will be of no use because they will spoil. Maybe if you compost that, it may not be the best thing because not everything is good for necessarily optimum for composting. So for example, if you have excess pumpkin that you're not able to sell to consumers on the open market, then you can dry that by using the biogas that is generated from the pig waste. You can use the biogas to dry the pumpkin, and then when you are ready to make the feed, you can process that now. You can shred it, you could process that and mix it with other ingredients and feed the pigs back with that.
Biogas is used to fire an oven or a dryer or something like that?
Well, yeah. If you get the waste in a liquid form, the waste you can trap that sort of like in a septic tank, and you trap that, and the solid will sink to the bottom, and the gas would rise in the air. Okay. Now, when that gas rises, you can trap that sort of like in a balloon, like in a tank, and then you can utilize that to fire up a burner. And that will produce the heat for drying the grain or whatever crop, not necessarily only waste, but any surplus, so that you can preserve that by drying it down to about 10 to 15% moisture. If it's beyond that, they will spoil. So in order to store it, you need to have it dried. And then once it's dried, you can use it when needed. So you're always accumulating a pile of raw materials for making feed. Now, you can also use passive solar drying, because let's say if you were to use solar panels, it might be more costly. But we have an abundance of sunshine here. And when you get that, you can actually use a gradient. Let the air come in one direction into a chamber, and you have a gradient, a slope where that air will rise. But when it comes in, you can have a solar collector, maybe even a plastic or some kind of solar collector. So as the air flows into that chamber, it heats up through that solar collector. And then it will have an area at the back of that chamber where you can have like a tower. So the air will rise. And you can use that for drying. But if you don't have sufficient solar coming through there, hot air coming through there, you can supplement that with the air from the burner coming from the biogas. All right. Yep. So you don't necessarily have to use sophisticated or very expensive technology. You can use the sort of the indigenous technologies, very simple systems, depending on how complex or how much money you have to put into this. So you can utilize a system like that, and that's the system I'm proposing for Plum Tree Farms. Kids.
You've been listening to Dr. Leighton Naraine talk about his concept of flipping the funnel to get the most out of small-scale farming for local consumption in the Caribbean. In our next segment, Dr. Naraine talks more about how his book grew out of his own practical experience operating a 5-acre farm in St. Kitts, and why research on farming needs to be based on practical experience and theoretical models, such as the flipping the funnel idea that is the focus for this podcast series. You can find his book through IGI Global Publishing. Their website URL is www.igi-global.com. That's www.igi-global.com. You can also go to Dr. Naraine's author webpage on Facebook. It's called Flipping the Funnel for Farm Sustainability. There you can find more information, including a chart illustrating the different phases in flipping the funnel, and you can check out photos of plum tree farms in beautiful St. Kitts. For now, I'm Dr. Kevin Meehan from the University of Central Florida saying thanks for listening, and please tune in again to another episode of Flipping the Funnel.